Welcome to the Intuitive Therapist Podcast with Janis R. Cohen, therapist, clairvoyant, empath, and medium. Listen in as she takes a no-nonsense deep dive into real human struggles and how to resolve them. Janis will share channeled information from her spirit guide team, as well as the angels and archangels, to help you master your emotional, physical, financial, and spiritual destiny. And now, Janis R. Cohen.
Hey y'all, this is Janis Cohen, the Intuitive Therapist here on the Intuitive Therapist Podcast. Let me ask you a question. How many times have you blamed external circumstances for the way your life's turned out? We humans do this all the time. Blame others and external conditions for our successes and failures. It's almost like it's our default setting to react to what's happening externally, like versus shifting and focusing internally and asking ourselves this question: what in my field co-created this experience into my life? You see, we forget that we are the central and core part of our lives, be it we find fault with everything outside of us. External circumstances and other people, they're not the only sources of difficulty we experience in our lives. The true culprit of our struggles can only be found by addressing ourselves. You know, you co-create with the universe all the time, whether you realize that or not, but we tend to forget that when things don't go our way, don't we? Why? Why do we do that? Why do we hold everything else accountable for our foibles except ourselves? And that's a hard pill to swallow. It's like, well, I didn't want this, so why am I taking the blame? Is it possible to look at it a different way? Is it possible to look within, refocus, and say everything that I experience in my life, I've called in, and I've agreed to that. I take ownership of that. I take responsibility for that. And because of that agreement, I am willing to look at myself and my part in the happiness or unhappiness in my life. Now, if you've been a student of self-development for a while, one of the first things you'll learn is that to change your external circumstances, you've got to change your internal circumstances. But if you haven't studied a ton of self-development and you still struggle to get your life in order, at least on track, then you'll want to listen to today's episode in full, because I'm going to shine a light on the reason why you keep blaming everything and everyone else for staying stuck in your life. My family, current and past generations, have been plagued with addiction, and I don't have shame about that. That's their stuff, right? But I'm a recovering smoker. I haven't smoked in 10 years. And I struggled with smoking for well over 30. I started smoking when I was 12. My father smoked. So I was dabbling at a very, very young age. And then very quickly over the next few years picked up the habit full time. So I stopped and started and stopped and started more times than I can count, because I knew it wasn't right. I knew it wasn't good for me. And I knew that it was something that I needed to stop doing for, at the very basic need to have good health. And I didn't know what fueled it. I was never, up until the point that I figured it out, I didn't know. It just was something that I picked up. It was a habit I practiced, and it was something that I did where I was in full denial of the impact that it was having on me. Once I realized, though, the root cause of my addiction, outside of the fact that I was genetically predisposed to be an addict, I realized the root cause of my addiction was anxiety. It was the anxiety that I practiced. Once I realized that, I remember, I'll never forget, I was in my apartment years ago, and it hit me as I was standing by my couch getting ready to go smoke a cigarette. And I said, oh my gosh, this is the reason why. I feel my life is kind of out of control. I don't feel in control of my life. So I use smoking as a mechanism to connect with my body and be present by inhaling deeply with the cigarettes and then exhaling. It calmed my nervous system. Once I put these dots together, I actually quit smoking that day. I stopped using it as a crutch, and I began to deal with and face the real issue, how I was dealing with my life and how helpless I felt to change it. Once I realized that every time I felt anxious, uncertain, alone, lonely, resourceless, always wanting what I didn't have, I smoked. I smoked at every commercial when I was watching TV. In fact, as all addicts do, I revolved my entire life around smoking. And I tried to hide it the best I could from those closest to me, but you know what? The funny thing is, if you're a smoker or an alcoholic, some part of you that you can't soap and perfume away is going to smell like cigarettes or alcohol. The attempts to cover up my addiction never worked. There were always signs that I was still an active addict. And the moment I realized that it was my anxiety that caused me to smoke, something inside me shifted. And like I said, I was able to quit for good. I dealt with myself. For the first time in years, I dealt with myself. I faced my demons and I got right with myself. I did not allow the fears and the worries to overtake me. I was like, screw this. I've got to change my life because I do not want to be a stinky, smelly smoker, a wheezing smoker. I was wheezing a lot because my lungs were getting so messed up. I got to get right with myself. And it wasn't easy. Yeah, I had some nicotine withdrawal, but the decision I made, because I was committed fully, you're either all in or you're not. Commitment is I'm 100% in. If you're not 100% in, then you're just interested in it and you can't make the change. But I was committed and determined to live a healthier life, both in my mind and in my body. And I began to realize how important I was to myself. I began to pay attention to what my heart wanted for me because I was called to play a bigger game. My soul demanded that I do. I began to give life to my dreams for the first time that I could ever recall 10 years ago. And I stepped away from what was expected of me. Now, this sounds lovely. I know. I decided to quit. I quit. I refocused. I dealt with my shit. La, 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 everything's great. But the reason why I share this struggle with you and how I overcame it is because I decided to do a Me-Tox, where I detoxed myself from how I was actually abusing myself, how I had such little regard for myself, little self-respect, little self-confidence. And I detoxed myself from that and from avoiding dealing with myself and the conditions of my life. Have you ever done a Me-Tox? Noticing your limiting beliefs and dealing with them and asking for guidance about how to rethink, re-see, re-perceive the limiting beliefs that you have? Noticing how you allow those limiting beliefs to play out in your life? Noticing how you still have an emotional charge with certain people and certain past experiences that you haven't come to peace with? Noticing how you avoid dealing with your truth? I know too many addicts who are terrified of Me-Toxing because if they do, they're going to be left to deal with the shame of how they've shown up for themselves and others over the years, as well as not dealing with the trauma that happened in their lives to cause them to use. Addicts are notorious for avoiding dealing with themselves. The ego tells us how painful it's going to be, and we fucking listen. We get terrified of facing our truth because we are terrified of not being good enough. We're terrified of not being loved. We're terrified of being rejected. And we listen really well to what our ego tells us. So we keep numbing ourselves and putting off doing the work to get clean and sober. And that may mean literally from substances, or that may mean getting clear and sober from limiting beliefs that we have. What if you aren't somebody who uses a substance? You're addicted to a substance, and you still don't feel truly in touch with yourself and your dreams. And you find that your life really isn't a reflection of who you are inside. Like you're saying to yourself every day, I'm better than this. Why doesn't my outside world reflect the fact that I know I'm amazing? I know I'm lovable. I know I'm a good person. I know I'm worthy of amazing abundance in my life in all ways. But my external reality is not reflecting that back. Right? So this is where the Me-Tox comes in, because something inside of you is in conflict with what your soul knows the truth is, but what your mind telling you to do, what you're believing. And this is being out of alignment. So how do you do a Me-Tox and get right with yourself? I thought of a few steps. And the first is to get a journal and write out your dreams, your goals. Take time to indulge yourself in this process. Even if you feel like you have fucked up your entire life, you haven't. There's always a new moment to choose differently. And if you recall, many episodes ago, I gave you the 7-word phrase that you need to finish repeatedly until you can't finish it anymore. And it's, I choose to know and believe that. You've got to give life to your dreams in order to have them. I want you to get really specific with your dreams and goals, and then compare your dream list to your actual life. You won't be shocked by anything, but you're bringing the things to your conscious awareness that you have pushed away and pushed down. What doesn't exist? What is preventing it from existing? And why haven't you achieved it yet? Look at those questions. What inside you doesn't want it? And that may sound like a really weird question because your mind's like, of course we want it. Of course we want to have abundance in all ways. But there's something in you that says you can't have it or you don't want it. Otherwise you would have it. So what inside you says you can't have it? What inside you says I can't handle it if I have what I want? Look into those questions, and you're going to see where the gaps are in how you're showing up for yourself and what your external reality looks like. And once you identify what isn't working, allow your intuition to guide you about how to close those gaps. That means get out of your thinking mind. It means being. It means saying, okay, universe, what's my first step right now? And it may be to go, like I asked myself this morning, I was guided, go fix your breakfast. Have your 2 eggs, your kiwi, and your berries. I'm like, okay, let me do that. And then I came back and I go, okay, what's next step? You'll be guided. Trust that. Step 2, learn to get quiet with yourself. Don't expect to stop your thoughts. That will never, ever, ever happen. And only the most advanced meditators can do it. So 99% of us will not. It's not that you can't. You won't. Unless you have learned over the next 20 years to be in meditation for hours at a time and learn to stay so incredibly present. But most of us can't. So instead, all I want you to do is just notice all of the thoughts that come up. Just notice them when you sit with yourself. And if you're not somebody who has been a a good steward of meditation, resistance is going to come up. And you're going to want to escape, and you're going to want to run, and you're going to want to get up and move, and instead of just sitting and being with the discomfort and moving through it. Notice where you feel resistance in your body. I want you to focus on that and allow the reason why you feel this resistance to show up in your awareness. I want you to notice the thoughts, the ones that are on autopilot, that aren't supporting you, that are hindering you. And I want you to get to the root of it, the core belief, because it's one of these two things. I'm not good enough, or I'm not loved enough. And of course, there's a third one. I don't deserve it. Once you've identified which one it is, I want you to take time to find out why you believe that. Identify all the thoughts that come up when you kind of have hit the jackpot, the bullseye on the thought that has motivated you to feel so poorly. And if those justifications are actually true, likely they're not, after that, ask yourself, what can I do today or right now that would allow me to feel deserving or good enough or loved? What do I need to do for me? And then go do that. Ask yourself that question every day and go do that thing every day. And it may not be the same thing, but you'll get a download about what you need to do. And maybe it could be that you just take better care of your body. Maybe you change your diet. Maybe you start walking. Maybe you do mirror work where you're looking at yourself and you say, I fucking love the shit out of you, to yourself. And you begin a practice of connecting with Source, feeling the good energy from God, the angels, and the universe. Get quiet with yourself. The third step that came up through me from Spirit is find time every day to check in with yourself. If journaling, if it's journaling in the morning to do a brain dump and work through your lingering emotions and uncovering your limiting beliefs, or maybe it's at night when you're laying in your bed and the world has stopped and you're left with your thoughts and you notice them, write those down, check in. How am I doing? How did I do today? What promises did I keep to myself? Where do I need to do that better? What would bring me peace and happiness to do every day? Always prioritize yourself first and your well-being above everything else, including your partner, your children, your job. Choose you first every single fucking time. Then identify what one thing is that you could do the next day to clean up your side of the street, to get right with yourself, to be good with yourself, to feel like each day you're doing something that you love, that makes you happy, that opens you up to possibility, that is affirming what you want and who you are. We always need to practice good self-hygiene if we want to grow and expand. Detoxing isn't just for substance abusers. We all need to put this practice into place so that we can live clean and sober lives and stay connected to Source. And when we aren't connected to Source, we're going to feel a vacancy that nothing and no one else can fill outside of us. Where do you feel vacant? What part are you playing in your own life challenges? It's time to look within. I wish you a blessed day, a wonderful week, and as always, live intuitively. And don't forget, check out my YouTube channel on The Intuitive Therapist with Janis R. Cohen and Instagram at The Intuitive Therapist.
Thanks for listening to The Intuitive Therapist. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share this podcast with a friend, and be sure to give us some stars and a favorable review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in.